Welcome to another episode of I'm Not Yelling, I'm Dominican podcast, hosted by Nachi and Damaris. Welcome back, everybody. This is your girl, Nachi, and I'm here with...
Damaris, known in certain circles as High Post.
And today we're going to talk about money, but more importantly, your relationship with money, knowing where your money is going, developing a plan to bring in more money, and building wealth. And to make this conversation even better, we have a special guest and the pleasure of having Krystal Todd, CPA of the Cash Compass. She's going to share some knowledge and drop some gems as she does on a daily on IG and YouTube. So we want to give a great welcome to Krystal. Welcome, Krystal.
Hey y'all. Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to have this conversation because at a time like now, it is crucial for us to understand.
Yes, absolutely. So why don't you share a little bit about yourself to our listeners so they get to know a little bit about you and what you do and what you offer.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Krystal Todd. I am a CPA, which stands for Certified Public Accountant. So it's just another level that I had to take as far as like getting more credits in college, and it's taking an 11-hour exam so I can get certified to be an accountant, which opens up more opportunities for accounting jobs. So I started my career as an auditor, and like I was telling the ladies before the show, I was able to be exposed to a whole lot of mess, really. So there was some companies who were super great. They had their money down to the penny, was beautiful auditing them. And then there were other companies where I'd be there for hours. I mean, I'm talking like 11, 12 hours a day trying to get through their stuff because it was a mess. No one knew what was going on. You ask people what they were doing in their job, and they literally looking at you like looking at me. I mean, we both look at each other, right? So it was a lot. Yeah.
Like what I do? No, what you do, right?
Yeah, I'm like, do you know what? No? Is this thing on? Like, yeah, okay. So they had no clue what they did. They were just kind of there getting the check, and that was about it. So that was interesting. But it opened my eyes to different things that we might think that we're experiencing only as an individual, but businesses are really going through it too. So businesses are having trouble managing their money. Businesses are having trouble keeping systems, and we tend to kind of put them on a pedestal when they're not really that. They're just ran by people, right? So it's like my first eye-opening experience and what like the first inspiration for creating content online like I do. So then I switched gears and I became a financial reporter. And this is basically people who create financial statements for investors to look at. And there you're with a whole different class of people. So you're not with the people who are doing the day-to-day work. You're with the C-suite, like the executives, and they're having a lot of more deeper conversations. So it's not just about what they're doing. It's about the economy in general, talking about interest rate hikes. We just had an interest rate hike recently, right? Today, with the Federal Reserve. So they're talking about that. They're talking about different industries. I mean, it was shocking actually to see how much they knew about the world. And I thought that was something that we could actually provide to everybody. So that is what created the Cash Compass, which is where I started off originally on YouTube, creating videos, educating people, not only about personal finance, because we always hear you got to save, like, yeah, like no shit, right? We know that. So it's also about the economy. And that's something that I think people really miss. And then you're wondering why you're in the middle of a recession. There's been signs for a long time, but you had no clue. Right. So that education is obviously free. I'm on TikTok and Instagram at Krystal Todd CPA for free. And then I also have more exclusive content where I have a whole bunch of courses that are helping you get your money together. So it's like the philosophy behind money, mentality, investing, a whole bunch of things to get yourself right. But there's steps to this, right? So you can also do like the budgeting. I also have like a budgeter that helps you kind of figure out like what your money's even doing to begin with, because you can't really make money moves if you don't know what your money's doing. So my whole platform, like my whole mission, my whole purpose in life is to keep people educated and constantly informed of what's going on, not only with your money, but with the economy.
No, that's great. You touched upon a ton of things I want to talk about. And starting with this idea, we've been in a recession, and technically last year we've been in that recession because I think we hit 2 quarters back to back with a negative GDP.
Yes.
And that is by definition whatever the recession is. But of course the government and those that be don't want to call it that, because if we say we're in a recession, that means people will stop spending less, and oh boy, right. God forbid,
exactly,
stop spending money on bullshit. But anyway,
more Amazon packages.
Yeah, all of a sudden the definition changed out of nowhere, right?
Like, okay, no, let's just keep it going, keep spending money that you don't have. On that note, you mentioned about living paycheck to paycheck? How do you save your money and those kinds of things? So that is a lot of Americans, and I forget what the percentage is, but it's a huge percentage of Americans that are living paycheck to paycheck. And that is a
Mhm.
scary proposition, especially
Yeah.
in light of the fact that we are in a recession and that, the economy is kind of all over the place. And so that is a scary thing. And that being said, my question to you is, how does someone get a hold of their finances so that they're not living paycheck to paycheck? What are some of the things they can start doing? And I know you mentioned about the budgeting, which I think is like part of the crux, right? Like you got to start somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I think the budgeting that we typically hear about is, oh, write down your income, write down your expenses. Like, okay, we all know that. Like, what? Give me
Right.
some more, right? Some more meat. So I like to tell people to start off with like their dream budget. So it's not only about, cutting your expenses. In my opinion, that's living with a lack mentality, and it doesn't really leave room for abundance. So if I'm just worried about not drinking Starbucks, like, girl, that's not gonna
I
be rich,
look, I'm
right?
glad
So
you
I
said
don't.
that. And I say that because I think that's why I always struggled with budgeting because I feel like
Mm,
if I'm setting this budget, I'm kind of restricting myself in doing certain
yeah.
things, and that always felt off. And so I just never could, catch on this setting a budget. I'm the what bills do I have? Let me pay this.
Right. Let's not get to it when I get to it. They're gonna get paid when I get there. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people
Hmm.
are like that. Yeah, and it's not unnormal. We don't get to learn
Right.
this in schools either. So by the time you get to adulthood, you're passed on whatever you learned from your parents, which if they weren't good with
Hmm.
money, I mean, hey, you out of luck, right? So I always say start with the future in mind. It's not enough to just say, well, I'm making $50,000 right now. Like, what if you don't want to make that for your whole life? So basically, what I've done, this is like a really good practice for listeners to do, is just sit down and write down all your expenses like that you would want to spend, and like what in your idea, what would be your most ideal luxurious life or whatever you want to live, because not everybody wants to be bougie and a millionaire.
Right.
So like say rent, I want to have my rent needs to, or my mortgage needs to be $3,000. Shopping, hello, $5,000 a month, right? My car, whatever. Just keep on going on the line and saying, in an ideal world, what would I be spending money on and how would it be? So if and you might have to like pull certain things together, like go look in realtor.com and find the house, go look for the car, and like really take your time and do this, because that's when you're gonna really see and put pen to paper and I get the first kind of like inkling of what you need to do and what your goals are. Because people tend to be clueless about money because there's
Right.
no plan. And the more clear your plans are, the better you can actually feel motivated and feel like, take responsibility for it and really take charge of your life. So I did that personally, and I found like my number was like around 250, which I was very generous. Like I wasn't holding back. Like I was putting thousands for shopping, thousands for travel, like So
Yeah.
you might be surprised, and like the money that you actually want to make is probably not even that far out of reach,
Right.
right? So then from there, what I like to say is, because like we're not even at your actual number, we're just trying to get this whole like visualization thing going, right? So then you have your dream lifestyle, and then based on what you're doing right now, see how realistic it is, right? So if I'm a school teacher and my lifestyle says 300,000,
Mm.
no, that ain't happening, right? So you have to be real with yourself and say, I need to do something else to get me to this life, because if I don't make it there, I'm gonna always be wanting for more, and I'm gonna always feel like I'm not getting enough. And I think that's what really adds to like lifestyle creep and spending more than you make, because you're not in the income you deserve to be in, that you actually want to be in.
Right.
So you need to figure out that number. Then from there, that's when you go back to your actual budget now, and then kind of really start piecing things together, right? And of course, you write down all your expenses, the date that they're due, and then the amounts, of course. Like just having all of that just visible on paper. A lot of people don't even know that. And if I were to ask someone like, "Hey, how much do you spend a month in your bills?" You should be able to answer that immediately. Like, okay, $3,000 in total, right? I spend approximately $1,000 on miscellaneous expenses. Like, you should get that good with your money that if someone asks you that, which they shouldn't be, mind your business, but if they did,
Stay out my
you would
pocket.
be able to say it. Yeah, but hold up, but you should
Right.
still
Right.
internally know that number, right? So that's kind of like level two. So number one, getting idea of what you deserve, what the life that you really want to live. Number two, what's reality, and then number three, bridging that gap, right? And I always say, like, and I don't want to like take over the conversation, but like there is mm, there's still ways to do what you love and get paid for it, especially now with the way things are online, right? So like back to my teacher example, if you're just working in a high school, yeah, you're probably out of luck, right? Even at college, you're probably out of luck. You're not going to be making $250,000. But I teach online and I make thousands of dollars, right? Like more than teachers are making. So you have to just figure out how can I still do what I want, but in a way that commands a higher income, right? So teaching online is more profitable than taking whatever the government's going to give you, for example, and things like that. And that's the three-step budget process.
And I love that you mentioned it's your how you think about money, because for me it's always been about the mindset. And I think while you can budget
Mm-hmm.
all day, all do all of that, but and again, you should be planning for a surplus and not budgeting for a deficit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that, it's just the mindset.
Exactly.
It's a shift in how you perceive money and where your attitudes are towards money. Because I think if you don't if you don't work on that mindset first, you will fail. You will never reach your money
Absolutely.
goals because you're not in a mindset to even think abundantly. If you're thinking on a scarcity, and I hate that, like that whole
Me
mentality,
too.
like I can't do.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can. You just got to figure out. And I'm a firm believer in that. What you're passionate about, you can find a way to make money from that too,
Yes,
right? You don't have to be
absolutely.
tied to a salary to just make money. And so that kind of is like that idea of I believe you should have multiple streams of income and figuring what that is,
Yes.
right? I know
Yeah.
you go on IG, there's like so many hustles about like, oh, get a part-time hustle. But when I look at them, I'm like, oh wait, I gotta pay you for this part-time, this side hustle.
Look, that's they hustle and you trying
Yes.
to use about your fun, okay? Please. Everybody got a course for some bullshit.
But
Okay?
there's that whole idea of like, but I do think that there needs to be multiple streams of income. And so I know you talk about that within the cash conference about having these side hustles, and some of that could come from your passion, right? Like what you're passionate about, and you can figure out
Yes.
how to do. You put out a great example of you could still be a teacher without working in a classroom setting and potentially earn
Exactly.
more.
And I mean, I can't think of an industry that you cannot do that, especially with online. I think we are in a really interesting time because all these social media platforms are free. And that was unheard of back in the day where every time you wanted to get yourself out there, you had to buy an ad or you had to be out in the street handing out business cards. Like you could just get online and
Right.
start
Right.
chatting. Right. And now you are just gaining so much followers, so many eyeballs. And it's like it can happen really rapidly if you're consistent.
Right.
And I think that's what people really struggle with the most.
Mhm.
Well, actually, I think the first thing people struggle with is just figuring out what to do as a side hustle. I know a lot of people say, like, I mean, for me, money came kind of naturally. It's my field, but not everybody has that same experience. They might be working a job, but they're not necessarily passionate about
Mm-hmm.
that job. So, a tip for trying to figure out what to get started as your side hustle is thinking about something you could talk about for like 30 minutes nonstop, right? Like, I can talk about money. Y'all don't have to even be here. I can talk to myself about money, like, for like hours and hours and
Let me
hours.
go
I
clean
can't
the
get
house
tired of this.
and leave Krystal up here.
Yeah, I got it. Don't worry. Hey, y'all. I can hold down the whole audience by myself, right? Like, so thinking about something like that you can just like, whether it's like, maybe if you love dogs, or even if you're someone like who's addicted to watching reality shows, you can do reactions to reality TV. Like, there is nothing you can't monetize off of right now. I mean, depending on how what you
Mm-hmm.
about, right? You can sell your
Mm-hmm.
feet online, right?
That's
There's people doing
girl.
they just
Yes.
they getting creative out here.
Yes. I was like, wait a
Okay.
minute, you get money.
So right. I'm like, I think my feet too fat for that, but
They
listen,
like fat
I probably
feet.
would.
There's something for
Right.
everyone, Crystal. Don't.
Exactly. So just starting with something that you're probably not, or that you can't stop talking about will be a good start. And then just go ahead and do it. And I think the other thing people struggle with is that they don't see results instantly. And our society has just crafted us for like instant gratification, right? Like now you don't have to even watch, this is like probably petty, but it adds to it. You don't have to watch commercials anymore. You
Mm,
can get DVR and zoom right past it, right? You don't have to watch commercials on YouTube either. Skip
Mm-hmm.
ad, right? Like we are just conditioned in even ways you don't think about to just get past and to get to the good stuff. So like when you are doing something that takes a long time, right? The quickest way to make money is the long way, right? Just taking your time.
mm,
But you don't really want to do that because you've been conditioned to get everything as soon, Amazon 2-day package, right? If I don't get my package in 2 days, I'm literally dead, right? So I can't function. So, so unfortunately, we have to kind of break past that because when you are building side hustles, it's not going to be money on day one, not for everybody. It took me 11 months and I was posting consistently on YouTube, all right? Once a week, every week. And at the end of the 11 months, I had 300 subscribers. My mom was only the one in the comments. Like, that was really it. Okay.
Go, mommy.
Thank God. Yeah, my mom was holding it down in them
Oh,
comments.
that's
Okay, by
right.
herself. No, like, and I still showed up for 11 months with not even one penny from it. Right. Then the recession happened. Everybody wanted their stimulus checks, and boom. Like, and then that was my opportunity. Right. So if you're just prepared and you keep on building that side hustle, when people start to find you and then they come to you, they're going to see you already have a portfolio ready. Right. So if you are always making reaction videos about, different shows, and even though no one's watching them, one thing can go viral, then they're going to go to your page and wow, you have so much things to watch. So you have to build that portfolio even though nobody's watching, because eventually they are going to start watching. And then when you get those eyeballs, it's a wrap. Right. Then the money flows. And maybe if you don't want to do social media and everybody wants to be a content creator or be on TV or whatever, there's other options too, right? Like, you can look at high value skills right now. So right now that would be like behind the scenes type of things, video editing, graphic design, right? Coding, like all these things are like pretty much behind the scenes, but they're in high demand. Copywriting is another one. These are skills that you don't have to necessarily be in front of anybody. But if you get good at writing, or if you know how to write, you have a good way with words, right? You like to learn on the computer. Boom, learn those things. Those things don't even need degrees. You just watch a couple, like enough YouTube
And you're
videos,
done. Yeah.
and it's up, right? Like, yeah. So it's like we have so much free knowledge at our hands, and people think that they won't pay for knowledge they got for free, but you'll be surprised, because a lot of times people are not paying for the knowledge; they're paying for the consolidation, right? Some of these things that I'm telling people online, or even in my course, you can find on the internet if you look hard enough, but I'm saving you the hours. You're not doing all the work. So I'm giving you time back in your day that you
You're
don't
paying for
need to waste.
convenience. Yes.
Right. So exactly. And I think people don't think about these things when they're thinking about having side hustles.
Yeah, you mentioned the economy and how before you got on the call, you were shooting a video because of all that's going on, the Fed rate hikes and all that good stuff. And so I feel like in general there's too much reliance on just having this one job, right? And just relying on one salary, and I think it's very dangerous. So I, I'm all for people having multiple ways and side hustles, but I think you're right. Like, it requires patience. It's not going to be an overnight success. Like, that doesn't really exist. You got to work. You still got
And
to work for
Krystal,
it.
I recall one of your videos, you had said something about, there's a difference between having an emergency fund versus an emergency
Yes.
cash flow. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that
Yes.
gave me an aha moment myself. I'm like, oh yes, an
Oh,
emergency
good.
cash flow. That's what I
Yes.
need.
Yeah. And I can get into all of the different things that we've been told that is completely the reverse. But one of them is having an emergency savings. And that can work for some people, but we've all heard the same regurgitated, parroted financial information or tips or advice, and it might not work for you. So for me, for example, I would have a proper panic attack if I lost my job and then the only money I had was this static savings account, because obviously I'm not putting any more money in it if I don't get no job. Right. So like what is now me not having any income, and then the little income I do have left, I'm now, tearing through that. I would be panicking. Right. So there's people like me out there, they might prefer emergency cash flow. You can still have your emergency savings, but have something you could just pivot into. So my emergency cash flow is going on YouTube, going on TikTok, like all these things. I do it part-time right now. But if I were to get fired, you gonna see
Right.
even more of me. Like, you think I'm on there now? Oh my God, 3 days a week. I'm gonna be,
I have time.
yeah, I would be like, hey y'all, I know y'all seeing me. I don't care, right? Like, I'm gonna be everywhere, because then my hustle will increase, right? So then, once it was your side hustle that you was kind of building on the side, now saves you, because you could just pivot really quickly and just kind of put more into it, right? Like, even if you're doing something like Uber driving, if you become an Uber driver, and you're doing it on the side while you have your job, if God forbid you get fired, well, now look, you've already gotten a whole bunch of 5-star ratings. You've already know the process. You don't have to like just scramble and try to figure something out. You already know to immediately pivot. That's your emergency cash
and
flow.
that gives you peace of mind. That's how I felt, having that emergency cash flow. And it's funny because I do freelance work aside from my 9 to 5, but I've always been doing something, right? And I think that's always been my peace of mind. Well, if I lose my job, I'll just do more of whatever I was doing.
Whatever.
And I just,
Exactly.
keep it pushing and work harder to to bring in more cash from that side hustle. But it made
Yep.
sense when you said that, because I would always hear you need to have your emergency fund, your savings, and make sure that you have that. And you're right. Once, if you do lose your job, that's, you have that one fund that's not, you're not putting any money into it, and you're going to live off of that, what, for the 3 6 months that you saved up for. Then what? And
If
that
that,
goes by
right?
really quickly.
Yeah.
Right, when you think about it,
Yeah,
it's just like
right.
right. So if you're relying on this cushion of 3 to 6 months of expenses, that's a lot of stress on yourself trying to figure out what's your next move during that time frame.
Yeah. Mind you, I'm not sure how the statistic, they didn't ask me. So, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't included in this, right? So I don't know who they sampled, but it said that there was 70% of Americans don't even have $1,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of people don't even have that 3 to 6 month savings. So it's even
Yep.
more of a
Mm-hmm.
panic, right?
That's
Because
scary.
3 months is probably not even enough time to
Mm-hmm.
find a job. And even if we're not talking about emergencies, it's nice to have the ability and have options, right? Like if my jobs are talking crazy, I'm like, listen,
Yes.
I don't need this job. Like back to like,
Yes.
my man
Yes.
got 2 jobs. No, I got 2 jobs, right? Like it ain't my man, it's
Yes.
me. Yeah. So talk to me nice
Right.
or
Right.
else. Yeah. Like so I mean that makes you go into work, I'm not saying that you're gonna go in there and like, half-ass, but you at least there's certain things you don't have to
Yes.
tolerate if you don't like it. Whereas some people are saying jobs they absolutely hate because they don't have anything else to
Mm-hmm.
fall back
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
No,
the
on.
scary part about it.
that's a scary
Mm-hmm.
proposition, and I think again, it just goes back to, I feel like you can't, these corporations, you can't trust these hoes. Like they don't have no
Nope.
At all.
Nope.
Yeah,
towards you.
that's another I think, like in addition to like the emergency savings only, something else they always say is your 9 to 5 is more secure.
No.
Maybe not, right? Like we've seen
Lie,
people getting laid off
lie.
every
Yes.
day, right? Like, and then what? Then then they're so cold with it. You a lot, and like right now they're savages, these companies. Like people are just they're finding out that they got fired because they can't get into the building, right? They're getting emails.
Don't come in.
Like,
Like,
imagine
it doesn't work. What?
if you fired me when I'm at home, because if I come to the office, I'm tight
Yeah.
and I'm knocking something down.
Right.
Don't have me come to the office. I'm like, no, right? So people are getting fired in emails. People are getting transferred to the HR department. They're not even talking to their bosses about it, right? So like these days it's like very, very like savage mode, especially if you're not in a union. Like it's up for you, right? So it's not as secure because things can change all the time. Now business is not secure either. But for example, if I'm not doing good, or I feel like I'm maybe slowing down in my sales, I could try to pivot, right? I have more flexibility. I don't just Somebody doesn't just quit on me. I still have things that I can do to try to improve and try to get better and try to grow and try to get more customers, reach out to people I already have talked to before. So you have more options to get more money if you have your own business versus if someone tells you you're fired, that's the end of it.
Right. Right. So speaking about that, someone having their 9 to 5 or their, full-time job, whatever that is, what can they do now to start building that wealth? Like what are some simple ways to to get someone to start thinking that way, so that way they're not caught with like, oh my goodness, I just got fired and now I have to build my side hustle. But there should have been already plans and things in place to build your wealth.
Exactly.
What are some of those things that you've shared?
Yeah, so we touched on the side hustle, but I wanted to add one more thing because even if you don't have something that you're super passionate about, you can become what they call a virtual assistant.
Oh, yes.
And you can there's like Upwork, and there's a whole bunch of, like, if you just type in virtual assistant, you'll find different websites, right? So even if you don't have anything to offer, which I doubt that that's true, but some people really feel that way about themselves, right? So even if you feel like, oh, I don't have a passion, surely you can type an email.
Yes.
Surely you can go
Yes.
through something. You know what I'm saying? Like you can do those things, right? And then a lot of times people are looking for social media managers. That doesn't require social media understanding. They'll say, "Oh, go take some videos off of Instagram and put it on TikTok for me." Like you can figure that out really quickly, right? So there's still things you can do that don't require a passion or whatever, just to kind of get yourself in the door. Okay. I also like to say, don't be the weakest link at your job, because some people, that's just not for them. And it doesn't matter how I could scream from the top of my lungs, like how much money I'm making, how great I love business. Some people are 9 to 5
And
people,
that's it, right?
point blank period. Like they don't care. They don't want to hear nothing about no VA. They don't want to hear nothing about no dog walking. They just want to go to their 9 to 5 job and come back home and watch their little Netflix, right? So So if that is you,
Not
that's
dog
fine. But
walking.
then, yes, no, I mean, listen, this houses out here, people be walking them dogs, all right? I got a friend that be walking dogs. And she be getting to the bag too. I'm not even gonna sit here and play
It's
with
true,
you.
but I'm laughing because I'm like, people are like, I don't want a dog walk. I'm like,
You better get into it.
Get your ass out there. Yeah, exactly. But like, let's say that's not the case, right? But then you can't say all of that and then also be half-assed at your job. You have to pick just one struggle. All right.
Yep.
So you don't want to do business, you don't want to do side hustle, but then you also at work on your phone, you work remote, but you really at the mall. No, babe. It's not going to work that way, right? So like you cannot be the weakest thing at your job. So I like, no shame in my game. I already know I ain't getting fired first because, shorty over there, she's never doing her work, right? Like, so you just be a step above, like, like maybe 2 notches above the weakest link. At my 9 to 5, I like to do something called an internal resume. So it's just me bragging on myself. The minute someone says for me to do something and it's not in my job description, oh, boom, I did this, right? And like I just start keeping note of all these things because some jobs, like most jobs I've been to, they have a formal performance review, right? And a lot of times it's only twice a year. So then here comes June. I'm like, I don't know what the hell I did. Like I've just been doing the do, So then, yeah, like I know that you ain't seen me, but like you have to. Right, I'm doing excellent, right? But then you have nothing to back it up with, right? So like keep an internal resume, even if you don't plan on looking for a job, even if you've been at your job for 17 years and you have no intention on quitting, keep an internal resume every year of what you're doing. I do it by the quarter. And the minute I see, I'm like, oh, this is good. I did this, I did that, right? And I write it down.
Yep.
And that way when it comes, I had a review not too long ago. I had pages. They was probably sick of me reading. I was like, I did this. Back in Q1, March, I did this. I remember I helped you on that time. Yeah, no. All right. So
you're like, Bob asked me for a report. I gave him 3.
Exactly. You don't have to remember because I do. I wrote it right down right here. So, like that way you can prove, and like if maybe they forgot too, because like managers are not perfect, so they might have certain thoughts about you, but then when you remind them what you did, then that puts you a step above, right? In addition to that, again, so we're staying on the topic of like not being a half-assed 9 to 5er, right? I like to think about, people always say how they hate their jobs, right? What do you hate about it? And if whatever you hate about it, fix it.
Yes.
So for example, with me, I had a job, I had like a process at my job, and I'm like, okay, I'm not trying to sound like whatever. I might be, whatever. I got a college degree, and I'm over here copying and pasting stuff. I don't mind getting paid for that, but then I also want to be adding more value to the company, because if they're looking for someone to fire and like, oh, well, she's only copying and pasting. No, babe, I'm not, right? So for that, like, fix those things, right? How can you fix it? So for me, in that same situation, we had a software that we were using that can automatically do it for us. So I went and did it, right? I asked for forgiveness, not permission. And I think companies actually appreciate that. Like, I don't go switching everything without asking, but I create what I call a prototype. So on the side, and I say, hey, boss, this process is very slow. It takes a lot of hours. You have to hit them with those, these words. Like, I think I found like a cost saving strategy.
They like to hear that.
Helps optimize. It's like they like all that.
Yes, girl.
Yeah.
I disrupted.
So little buzzwords.
Yeah.
And then you show them your process, and I do that all the time. And that's something that my boss actually made a comment of, that she appreciated, that I'm just like much more,
you show it
like forward looking. Yeah. And that's something that I actually learned, because my former job, they told me that she had asked me like, why didn't you change this? And I was like, I didn't know I cared, right? Like you might not feel empowered to. And after she told me that, like, I never looked back from that day. Like, that was such an eye-opening thing. Like, why didn't I change it? I hated it, and I just sat there and did it because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. No, you need to be a disruptor, right? And it can be something very minor and small, but it's going to make you stand out, right? And that way you can insulate yourself. So maybe you're not, maybe you don't want to get another side hustle. Maybe you like what you're doing, but then you can still secure your spot where you're at more so than somebody else. The truth is, people are not, they go to work and they just do right what they need to do, right? So if you just do slightly more, you're going to look better and you protect yourself.
No, I think that's great advice. And for a lot of people, to your point, they just may think like, look, I just do my job to the letter, but no, because if you don't show that you're indispensable or what value you add to the company, you're going to be first to mind when it comes to cutting costs.
Absolutely.
Cutting costs.
Exactly.
So
exactly. And don't think they're not
Right.
talking about you. Sorry, go ahead,
Exactly.
Najee.
They are all
Because
the
they are.
time.
True.
No, but
Mm-hmm.
even if that's what you want to stay with your 9 to 5, I think it's still important, even doing your side hustle, to maintain those skill sets or even gain those extra skill sets, because I think
Mm-hmm.
those extra skills that you learn is going to help you kind of branch out to whatever side hustle you want to get into, because I think your own job
Yeah.
can give you some skills that you can certainly turn it around and leverage it for your own side hustle, because that's what we're here for. I mean, don't go to work just
Yeah.
to punch in and punch
Absolutely.
out. Get something out of it.
Like, right.
No, especially if they're paying
Exactly.
for like
Yes.
seminars or things for you to learn
Mm-hmm.
more, classes, courses. Take
Yes.
advantage of it. Take advantage of it.
Yep.
One of the things we I was thinking about when it comes to building wealth and stuff like that. And the three of us talked about it right before we started recording, but for me, I was fortunate that I started working with an asset management right out of college. So I was reading the literature that my company was providing on encouraging people to open IRAs and Roth IRAs, and even understanding what those terms were, what those investment vehicles did. And I was like, holy shit, if I don't, invest by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be dirt
Mm-hmm.
poor and a bag lady out here in the streets. So I was just like, and at that time, my company was like, they didn't start you with a 401k unless you worked there a full year. They changed that policy years later, but
Mm.
this is back in the day. And so for those first 12 months, I was like, okay, well, let me just open up an IRA, and that way,
Mm-hmm.
I'm building something while I'll wait for my company to start matching me. And
Yes.
just doing those things, like, it was a set it and forget it, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
love, like, so if you, especially if people are like, well, I don't have a lot of money to invest. I mean, literally, you can open up uh, an IRA account for like $25, $50
Exactly.
at most sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is like, I love that set it and forget it mentality,
Hmm.
because it starts to build and grow with the market, and you don't have to worry about it the way you would if you took it out on your own versus like just
Yeah.
automatically deducted. Are those types of things like are there other things like that come to mind to you about building wealth? Because that's just one way. Because I don't
Yes.
like to, I feel like, yes, investing in the market is one way, but that should not be the only way. When we talked about
Mm-hmm.
side hustles, I feel like we covered a lot here too, but I'm wondering, are there other things that one should think about, simple ways to start building?
Yeah, yeah. So for sure, I want to touch on what you said about the IRA or even a 401k, right? So not every plan is not for everybody. So you have to understand what your relationship with money is, like what your risk appetite is, and what your level of commitment really is. Because if you're someone who doesn't really want to commit a whole bunch of time to figuring this out, but you're also like risk adverse, then you should not be investing in crypto, right? Because crypto is
Hmm.
extremely risky
Yes, please.
and you need to be extremely involved in what's happening.
Yep.
So you need to understand, well, how do I feel? Like, am I okay with losing money? Am I going to freak out and panic if I see my stock portfolio going down, right? And then based on those answers, you know what to do.
Hmm.
So, for example, if you're somebody who I think, which most people I think are average. They don't really want to worry too much about it. They don't really understand the markets like that, and they just want to get in. Then yeah, something like index funds, which we get through your 401k or an IRA, is a good option. And if you're someone who would get freaked out about fluctuations, and I would say check it once a year and just leave it alone at that, right? Because if you
Yep.
keep on seeing it and it's going down, you're gonna freak out. And literally, if you set it and forget it, you're probably gonna end up better off than if you had touched that money yourself. Because once the money hits your account, you and I both know it ain't
Come
playing.
on now.
It's going right to
Right.
brunch,
Yes.
bottomless
New
mimosas, the
bag,
hookah, like
all
whatever. Everybody
that.
got, like trips to Lula. You was talking about, right? So like you're not going to go ahead and budget that. So definitely, if you're someone again who doesn't have the discipline, right? To like you got to know yourself and keep it real with yourself. If you're not the one who's gonna really put that money to the side, do something like an investment thing at your job, especially if you have a 401k and they match you, right? I don't want to get too technical, but like this is going to be helpful. Depending on what you think is going to happen in the future, would let you know what kind of retirement plan you should do, right? So if you're someone who says, I think in the future taxes have to go up, right? There's no way that the government's not going to raise
Hmm.
taxes in the future, right? And obviously you're speculating; no one really knows. But then it would make sense to do a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA, because that says you get taxed right now and your money grows tax free. So when everybody else is paying 30, 40, 50%, you already paid your little 25% back in 2023
Right.
and you're chilling, right? Conversely, if you say, well, they can't, there's only a certain limit, they can't take out too much of your money. Or if you say, I want to reduce my taxable income right now, right? I want that money right in my pocket right now. Then you could do what's the traditional 401k, right? Or traditional IRA. And what that does is it takes money out of your account pre-tax, right? So you don't get taxed on this money. Some people might say, oh, I don't have any money to invest. And the thing about it is, if you do the traditional, you might not even feel it because it doesn't come out. It's almost as if you never made that money. They don't count it against your taxable income. So when your job is calculating how much they should put out in taxes, it's almost as if you didn't make that. So if you put $10,000 in there, they're going to remove $10,000 from your taxable income, and that could actually put you in a lower tax bracket, and you might not even feel the difference, but you're still saving the money. Okay, so that's what traditional will do for you. Now, if you're someone who's like, I don't want to do that because I want my money to be locked up, right? Because they obviously there's downsides. If you need that money from your 401k, you're going to be heavily fined if you're not of a certain age, right? Or you can take a loan out, but then you're taxed taking the loan out, you're taxed on the money, whatever you made, like you just get taxed out the ass, right? So if you don't want to go that route, you can still invest in the stock market, but you would do that through something like Fidelity or Robinhood, Webull. There's ways to invest without necessarily being in the stock market, without being in the 401ks, but you still have access to that money, right? So if you wanted to sell it, you don't have to worry about filling out paperwork, talking to your job about it, then telling you what limit it is, right? So you still can get in the stock market, but not necessarily have to be subject to all these rules and regulations, okay? That's intangible assets. The other way to kind of make sure you're investing is tangible assets, and that's my favorite because those not only give you money in retirement, but right now too. So the one that people most know about is real estate, right? So if you buy a home, let's say you're first starting out, you don't want to take too much risk, right? You can't afford two different mortgages if something goes wrong. You can buy up to 4 units under a one conventional loan, right? So even though you have 4 units, you're not going to consider it commercial property until it reaches 5 units. And that's important because when you're still considered a primary residence and it's like you're under like a more residential loan, you get to have the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Once you get past 5 units, it's considered a business, and that those loans restart every 5 years. And that could be a little bit more risky, right? So this way, if you can afford the mortgage for that one home, but it's really 4 homes, right? If you don't get anybody in that property, you're not going to be out of luck because you can still afford that mortgage because you're going to live in one of the units. But if you're able to rent out those 3 units, and like in New York, we see like brownstones, like you always have multiple different apartments, right? Like these people, that's what they do. And then if you get someone to rent it out, then they're paying your rent for you, your mortgage for you, right? So you're getting a house essentially for free, or however the numbers work, right? So that's one way to do it. If you don't want to necessarily do the stock market, you don't have control over the stock market. And the thing about stocks is that if it goes to zero, I mean, that's the end of it, right? You have to hope that it goes back up.
That's the risk.
Even if your home goes to zero, you can still rent it out. Like no one's gonna live there for free. No, I mean, not my house, right? So if you're gonna live in the house, I could still, even if the value could drop 50%, it doesn't matter. I'm still getting cash flow from that property, right? So that's one way to do it, where you're getting cash flow now, cash flow in the future, hopefully appreciation if the house goes up in value. Another way to do it is, again, back to the business, but like businesses, right? Businesses are tax havens. I, for example, bought a new computer, fully taxable, right? I use it for my business, my phone bill, my utilities. I mean, I told them everything. Yep, I spent about 10% of this light bill came from my business, right? So I get to deduct that too, right? So even traveling, right? If I go to like these ladies I know, we're gonna go on a vacation, it's going to be tax deductible, right? So I could be in Aruba living my best life, and I can deduct it as taxes because I'm gonna be in business meetings with these women. So I can deduct my meals, I can deduct the flight, I can deduct the hotel, like all these things that I can still enjoy a trip, right? So people think taxes are like punishment. It's incentives. If you're doing what the government tells you to do, and like they want you to create homes, right? If you see government housing, is the hood. You don't want, right? So they don't want to do it, but if you do it, they're going to give you a whole bunch of tax benefits. If you open up businesses and provide to the to the community, you're going to get benefits because if they did it, it'd be a hot ass mess, and they don't want to do it. So they're incentivizing us to do these things. So that business is like the other way to just easily get in there, right? And then if you want to think about ways to get money that's like cash flow, but it's not as risky as maybe just like investing in like ETFs, you can invest in dividend paying stocks. Dividend paying stocks and bonds, for the most part, I mean, you can't really consider it fixed, but like for the most part, you're getting paid a certain percentage, right? So some stocks you only make money if you sell, and that might turn some people off. So if you have a dividend paying stock, you can benefit from if it does appreciate in value, but you can also benefit because every quarter or every month they basically give you some of your money back. So thank you for investing in us. Thank you for believing us in us. Here goes 30 cents, right? And it might sound like nothing, but that will build and it will compound. Same thing with bonds, right? A lot of like the bond market in this current economy, right? At the time of this recording, is actually paying higher than your high yield savings, right? So it's the government. They're considered risk free because if they don't have the money, they're gonna create the money, right?
Right.
And so
Magic
you're,
money.
as we've seen with all these semi checks and all the Ukraine, like yeah, they just found money out of nowhere, right? I'm like,
Right.
so I need that little.
Fill
Where
my
y'all found that at? Let me get that little
bank
printer.
account
I
up.
need that
Yes.
printer too in my home.
Let me borrow that just for 5 minutes. Don't even need it for long, right? So it's risk free. You're getting a stated percent, so you don't have to worry about, oh, am I gonna get my money back? That you're getting X amount every 6 months, every month, whatever the case is. So there's like 3 different ways for you to still get in there, still do something, and every way that I've described, you can get in even if you don't have a lot of money. So if you wanted to do real estate and you don't have a lot of money, you can do a real estate investment trust. And I'm heavily involved in one because I used to work at this company. Right now, I think the stock is like $16. Like I'll plug them. Starwood, STWD, not investment advice, but this is things you can start looking at, right?
Do your research.
So yes, please, like don't come back, Crystal ain't tell
Crystal
you to do nothing,
said.
okay? So Crystal ain't say shit, all
No,
right?
Chris got the information. You do with it
Right.
what you will. That
You
is
do
yours.
you, right? But like I went and bought some the other day because the dividend was 11%,
Wow.
right? And the thing about dividends is as long as they don't cut that dividend, you're going to be making 11% for the eternity of the company as long as they're always paying that, right? So you kind of lock that in, and 11% right now is unheard of. Your savings is paying like maybe 3%.
If
The
that,
bonds are paying around, right? They don't like Chase. Forget about them. I don't got no time for Chase. Like, but like like the higher yield ones are paying 3.4% ish. Like bonds are paying maybe 3-4%. This is a big deal, right? Verizon, something people really are familiar with, right? 7% dividend right now. I'm still paying my bills, so they better still be in business, right? So I can still get my little dividend check every quarter or whatever, right? So there's still ways that you can invest at any amount. I think the Verizon stock is like $30 something, right? The Starwood stock is like $16. These and like and you're getting a piece of real estate with that Starwood stock, right? You're getting telecommunications with Verizon. So you're investing. It might not feel like a lot of money, but you keep on doing that, it's gonna build. There's no way it can't.
no, I think that's great. I'm
No,
sorry,
I was
Nachi,
going to ask because, both of you had said if you don't start off early with your 401k, you may not be in a good position when it's time to retire. So, what would you suggest, or what would you say to those individuals who didn't start off early but want to build up their cushion?
Yeah, like obviously the best time to start was like when
Mm-hmm.
you were 20, and the second
Yeah.
best time to start is right now, right? So don't just keep saying,
It's
"Oh
too
my
late.
God, I
Yeah.
was old. I wish."
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
do it
Yeah.
now. Do it now, right? Like you might have to put in more, right? Or you might have to think about other things. When they're saying that, they're primarily talking about the stock market because you're gonna have growth. That growth compounds. You're gonna have interest. But like I said, if you're doing something like real estate, for example, even if you're in your 30s, right? If you can afford a 15-year mortgage, or if you can afford to pay off a little bit extra at a time, by the time you reach retirement age, hopefully that home is
Right.
already paid off, right? And if you wanted to, you could rent that home out. Now you have nothing is on the home, right? You can rent it out and you can go maybe live somewhere, it's like downsize, live somewhere else. Even if you just rent, even if you went to
Mm-hmm.
go rent, right? And now you have this home already paid off. So any money you're making from that is directly funding your lifestyle. So there's just different ways you have to look at it. Maybe as you get older, you have to focus on things that are going to actually give you cash flow versus
Mm-hmm.
appreciation because you don't have
Right.
the time for
Right.
things to appreciate. So you have to just assess how much money you can actually contribute to this, and how serious you are. Because even if you're in your 40s, you still have options. It just depends on how serious and how committed you're going to be.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And honestly, Nachi, while I said that I started in my 20s, but there's a part of that fear mongering that I didn't
Mhm.
like. It was fear that motivated. I mean, thank you, I guess.
Yeah, they looked out. It still worked out.
A nice 401k, but at the same time, I was like, damn, this is scary. And what if I was 40
Right.
now, wondering like, holy shit,
Hmm.
I didn't invest in
Mhm.
any 401k. What do I do now? And that's not a good place to be, because it makes you feel like
Yeah.
there's scarcity there, right?
Mhm.
Like there isn't enough, and that's not true. And I think we've pointed out throughout this discussion that there are multiple ways to build and build and grow your wealth. It doesn't have to just be this one way. 401k just happens to be a well-known
Right.
way, because in this
Hmm.
country we don't have pension plans or anything like that like in other
Mm-mm.
countries. But you know, that's just again, that's just one way and not the only way. So do not be
Hmm.
discouraged, listeners.
Yes.
There are many ways to
Yeah.
it is something where I feel like it then becomes a turn off for some
Mhm.
people.
Hmm.
It's discouraging, but it shouldn't be. And to your point, Krystal, you
Yep.
said just start now, right? Like you still have the
Yeah.
opportunity to do it. I know when I started, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do a Roth because I know I'm gonna be in a higher tax bracket by the time I retire.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this needs to be tax
I'm having.
right.
Yeah.
I was in my 20s, so there was a reason. But now, yeah, I'd be like,
Hmm.
yeah, traditional, because guess what? Don't take any more money now.
Yeah.
It'll be
Yeah.
the same, whatever, by the time I retire. That being said, I think for some people, and what you said, Nachi, makes me think about this. Some people have not invested early on because either they felt they weren't making enough money, or they didn't know what was happening, and or they're like in some sort of financial debt crisis or whatever. And I feel like there's a
Hmm.
bunch of traps out there as far as like people getting caught in credit card debt, or
Mm.
some other loans that they took out that they just weren't in a position to take out on. Like, we know in 2008 the whole mortgage industry was a
Hmm.
fiasco, because you had people um, and lenders putting these homes with people who weren't bringing in
Mhm.
enough. And so,
Yeah.
this predatory lending, saying that it was okay to do that. What are those gotchas or watch outs that people need to be considerate of while they're building their wealth? I feel like credit cards is one thing, and you mentioned that in one of your videos, which I love,
Hmm.
about the credit card interest rates, because you're like,
Yes.
corporations are going to get their money one way or
Mhm.
another. So,
Exactly. And they love people like that who carry balances, like big gotcha. Before I talk about that, I want to touch on the fear mongering thing.
mm,
If things that we're saying it brings fear in you, that means that you're not educated enough, right? And that's, I'm saying that with the most love, because, and people tell me all the time I'm fear monger. It's like, no, I'm informing.
mm,
There's two different
Yes.
things. If you're scared, it's because you
Yep.
probably don't feel prepared. You probably don't feel informed. You're probably clueless about what's happening. And anything that you hear that sounds slightly negative is worrying you. I can hear them saying the economy's crashing, stocks are falling, and I'm like, oh, okay, time to go buy up some stocks, right? So I'm about to cash out on everybody who was
Right.
fearful instead of
yep,
being
Mhm.
educated. So you're gonna be on one or two sides. Either you're gonna be the person that's picking up all the assets at a discount, or you're gonna be the person that's selling their assets at a discount. So you can be afraid if you want. I tell people, I'm not fear mongering. You're afraid. You say you afraid. That's two different things. Okay. Like, don't come on my page because I'm not the kind. I don't
okay.
go high. I go lower. Right. Don't come on my page with your mess because we gonna get
I
it.
match energy.
So
You're like,
anyway,
you don't want the smoke. You don't want
I'm
the
matching.
smoke.
You know, I had to double it.
I
Okay.
love it.
um. So if you do feel fearful, then maybe start doing some more research. Maybe start looking into what we're saying deeper and like really get an understanding, so you can feel empowered instead of feeling scared when these things
Yes.
happen. Okay. And then as far as like the gotchas go, the credit card. This got me when I
Mm.
was in college. Like they'll
Not you
always say,
alone.
"Oh, introductory, yeah, introductory credit card, 0% for 18 months." Them 18 months go like that, and the next thing you know, you have this whole balance on your account, and you stressed out. They are not giving you 0% because they like you. They hate you, right? It's a trap.
They're like, come.
They know they about to
Yes.
get your ass. Yes, they know it because most
Gotcha.
people do not pay
Mhm.
things off. So understand they're not doing that to help you out, to look out for you. No, they're not looking for your best interest. They are looking to get you because they don't make money off of people who pay off their debt, who pay off their credit cards, right? I have credit cards, I pay them off in full. They're not making money
Mhm.
off of me. They need you. They need you to not pay. So they're going to trap you. They're going to tell you that you have 0%. And then if you miss one day, your interest rate went up 10%, right? So you cannot miss any days. That's one gotcha, right? The other one, I think, and this I got a lot of heat for, but I don't care. The high yield savings is a scam,
Mhm.
okay? And not a scam as it's fake and it's like, you do get the yield, but inflation is at 6% allegedly. Okay, when I look at my stuff be going up every day, it feels like, right, like everything's getting more expensive the minute I go to the store, right? So it's not really 6%, but let's just say it is to be conservative.
Fine.
If everything is going up by 6%, but your savings is only going up by 3%, quick, my 5-year-old daughter can tell you
Right.
that that's a problem, right? Like, so a lot of people are telling me it's better than nothing. What if your man said, "Oh, I'm dating her
Mm.
because she's better than nothing"? Excuse me.
Ooh.
Excuse me, you would not
Not
like
at
that,
all.
right? So have that same energy with your finances. You would not want someone to pick you because it's better than nothing.
Mm.
And if you're in your high yield savings because it's better
Mhm.
than nothing, you really need to start thinking about money differently, because it's really nothing is happening in that savings. All it's doing is making you feel slightly better. But do you want one pile
Right.
of shit or two? I want none. Right, so like we don't want to pick from the bottom of the barrel, the worst case. You want to kind of figure out how to get more competitive, which is why I said like that stock I was talking about, 11%, I think will definitely help me beat inflation, right? Like 6% or 3% of the savings, no. I keep money in there because I want to take advantage of certain things. So I'm not saying don't do it, right? Like if you're somebody trying to save for a house, you don't want to take chance with that money. You want to make sure you're saving that and protect your principal. But if you're looking for, unfortunately, in like this current economy that we are in, we have to step out into the risk curve. Okay, so believing things like keeping your money in a savings, trying to like put money on your credit card and say, "Oh, I'm gonna pay it off later," those things are damaging you. Okay, another, I think it's not really a gotcha, but something to think about is you can still invest without investing in anything, right? And this is for people who have debt. So if you have a credit card and the credit card rate is 20%, if you keep that on there for a whole year, you're paying 20% more for whatever
Mhm.
you bought.
Mm.
But if you're aggressive in paying that off, right, you're saving yourself 20%. That's an
Mm.
investment. You're
Yep,
getting a
that makes
return.
sense.
So don't think of investments only as, oh, I gotta go buy a stock. No, I have to get my net worth in check. Like that's anything that's gonna increase your net worth is making an investment. So don't think you have to get into stocks. Oh my God, like FOMO, I'm missing out.
Right.
No, if you have credit card debt, there's nothing out here. And if you know it, let me know. But there's nothing out here paying you 17, 20,
Right.
30% interest, right? You're not getting that return. So that's like the best return you can get if you have a credit card
Oh, yeah, that's
in
good
debt.
I love it.
advice. Because I know a lot of people get caught up
No,
on
no,
that
no.
credit card.
Yes.
Mm,
Yes, it's
let me
easy.
tell you.
It's easy. And especially if, again, you don't have the cash flow emergency fund or
Hmm.
your savings emergency
Hmm.
fund. Like,
Yeah.
then you're caught out there and you're relying on these credit cards, and they're the loan
This you
sharks.
are.
Yes. Big time loan sharks. And then you'll hear, I guess one more, I guess I'll throw in here. Just you'll hear these things can all sound overwhelming. Like we've ran through a whole bunch of different topics, right? So,
Hmm.
and that can be super discouraging. Just pick one that sounds the most interesting with you and start with
Hmm.
that, right? Like, so I would say if you're in debt, don't even worry about investing right now. Try to get out of debt, right? If you have no money saved up, try to worry about that. Like, just do one thing at a time. There's no right or wrong way to do things. Like, you're gonna feel good about yourself as long as you're making progress, and and like you're in your own lane. So it
Hmm.
doesn't really matter what steps you're going, like where you're at in life, how old you are. Just
Yeah,
move in the
yeah.
right direction. Because telling yourself you're too old so you give up, you're gonna be even worse off
Oh,
depending on Social Security, which ain't nothing.
nothing
Okay,
at all.
you stressed out in the damn 55
Yeah,
plus
and you're
communities.
right.
Mm.
It's all depending on where you are in life and just kind of building on, because I feel like the topics that we talked about
Yeah.
actually build off of each other. So if budgeting is where you are, focus on that, like you said. Or if you're past that and
Mm-hmm.
you're ready to build wealth and start investing, then look more into that. But yeah, it's about just being where you are and
That's
starting
level to this.
somewhere.
Yeah, and I think and right, we may have talked about a lot of things, but they're all things that are important to be considering today in
Mm-hmm.
this climate. And there's no best time to invest or build your wealth. I won't even say invest, but it's like building your wealth than the present
Mm-hmm.
time, right? So yesterday was
Exactly.
yesterday. that happened, didn't happen. You're here
Mm-hmm.
today. You need to decide what you want to do for yourself. And thank you, Krystal, because thank you for being
Yeah.
a part of this conversation. Obviously, you have the credibility, you have the chops, you know what you're talking about. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so important to share this information for people to take this on and to help them figure out how to build wealth. And wealth can mean whatever it is. That's an individual thing about what your goals are for that. And hopefully it leads to financial freedom if that is what you're looking to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, we always like to close out with a reminder. There's always going to be noise out there, but our message is consistent. Stop getting distracted by the smoke and mirrors and focus on what is important. Stop watching that CNN, that MSNBC, that Fox News, and focus on what's important, which is you. Focus on what makes you happy, your purpose in life, and whatever makes you vibrate higher. Keep your frequencies lifted, and always thank you for listening.
Love it.
That said, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at I'm Not Yelling _